Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the Thursday night preview once again. That time of the week, things seem to be going really fast now. It's like hard to believe we're in week 4 already. It's hard to believe we already have 3 Thursday night preview shows. It's just things are moving really quick, and this was what happens in the NFL, right? It just speeds up, and then next thing you know, we're at the playoffs.
Yeah, 4 weeks in before you even blink here. This is going pretty fast. Like you said, we're learning more about these teams and what they can do and who they're going to be. But yeah, another great Thursday night matchup, I think, here.
Yeah, we got the ocean meets the jungle. The 3-0 Miami Dolphins taking on the 1-2 Cincinnati Bengals. Should be an interesting matchup. I mean, the first thing we got to talk about is, are the Dolphins for real? And I get this is just all over the place. It's not even like the story's been beaten down, but really, this is like when you talk about this game, that's what I want to know. Because when they played New England, I thought it was sloppy on offense. Really, the defensive touchdown made the difference in that game. They were down 35-14 in Baltimore, which ain't nothing. Right? I got it. They rallied, had an incredible fourth quarter, one of the best fourth quarter games I've ever seen in the history of football. There's something to be said about that. But they were down 35-14.
Exactly, yeah. Not
so
a good spot to be.
That's got to be sloppy. And I understand you're playing Lamar Jackson, but I mean, it wasn't 4 quarters of football. You know what I mean? And then Buffalo, if you watch that game, it felt like the Bills should have won. They were better in every category, but really Tua makes the key plays, right? And we've talked about that a lot. Really what we've seen from Tua is he makes those key plays when the team needs them, and that's what the good quarterbacks do.
Yeah, and they're going to need him again in this one. He's listed as questionable with his back, quote-unquote, injury, and I think he will play. I think they want him to play. But this is somewhat of a, quote, trap game, they call it. I don't like that term. But after Miami just won the Super Bowl on Sunday, right? That they won the Super Bowl. They celebrated like they won the Super Bowl. Their fans celebrated like they won the Super Bowl. It was at home. They already had their parade, for God's sake. And now they've got a game on Thursday. So they've had their time, but have they had their focus on their next opponent? And I think that's what ends up costing Miami in this game. You have to shift your focus. You have to stay mentally ready in the NFL because your opponent's ready for you. Cincinnati still has a lot to prove with their record being what it is and looking underwhelming so far this season. Are you a real contender? Well, we're going to go and we're going to punch the Miami Dolphins, who are 3-0, in the mouth, and then prove that we're still a contending team in the AFC. And if I'm in Miami, that's what I'm nervous of right now about, right? You won the Super Bowl. You did your thing. You beat the Bills. And now can you bounce back from that to face another opponent on short rest, especially after a taxing game like that? Granted, they have the shade side or whatever, but 120 degrees on the field is 120 degrees on the field for both teams. So they're worn out themselves, and now they got to go.
It was a tough physical game.
It was,
right? Especially for the defense. I mean, the Bills ran 90 plays, so that defense was exhausted as well. So yeah, you're absolutely right that it's going to be a quick turnaround for them in just a short week here. They're not going to be 100%, but I guess the question would be, how good will Cincinnati be as well? Also with Miami, they got the hurricane. I'm not sure how much that impacts Miami, the city, but definitely a distraction when you start thinking about your family, your home life. The people on the team live there, right? So
yeah, I mean, the hurricane's hitting the other side, which is
Tampa.
A good thing. So it's the Tampa area, and they moved to actually the Miami facility to practice. But
nice.
It still could affect them, obviously, with the rain and all of that. But probably not as worrisome as the Tampa area. But they still, you never know mentally what that could do. I think the focus really, they probably went up to Ohio a little early for this one. The game is in Cincinnati, so and started getting ready, I'd imagine. But they just had a tough game on Sunday, and that bounce back time is pretty quick here. And because of that, they've got a laundry list of guys on the injury list, most of whom are questionable. and probably a game time decision. We won't know until Thursday night before the game who's in and who's out, including big names like Tua himself, Xavier Howard, Melvin Ingram, a bunch of these guys who Jalen Waddle got a little dinged up, might be. Most of them are questionable. They were limited participants on practice on Wednesday. So most likely some of them will play, but if a couple of them are out, that shifts things majorly in favor of Cincinnati.
Yeah, for sure. Injuries always impact, these short weeks. And really the short week games are always, everyone's a little banged up or the teams aren't 100%. And usually that shows on the field, right? It's not as exciting. We've seen many dud games on Thursday night. But really, let's get back to Miami. Where are they in the power rankings? Like, I've seen them in all over the place. And obviously power rankings are subjective, to say the absolute least. So, I mean, I've seen them number one.
I have too, and I think
is that legitimate? Is that justified, or should they be a little lower than that?
The reason I hate those types of rankings is give me your rationale, right? Is it because this team beat this team? Because there were years in the past, being a Bills fan, where I'm like, why are the Bills 18th on this list when we beat 4 of the teams that are above us? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And the same thing now, if you're going to justify that Miami should be number 1 because they beat the Bills, then tell me your criteria. Because always with these rankings, it just seems random, whoever the person likes and doesn't like. I like the Bills. I'm putting the Bills at 1 still. I'm not a Miami fan. I'm putting Miami at 10. I think Miami right now has a case to be in the top 5, certainly, with a 3-0 record. And, they've got divisional opponents they've beaten. A good team in the Bills. They came back against Baltimore. The question is this projection long term? Like, because they're good now, I think they're going to be good at the end of the season and continuing moving forward. So if that's the case, I would not have them in the top 5 even. I don't think they're a top 5 team in the NFL come the end of the season. They are right now, for sure, based on how they've played and the opponents they've beaten, but not projected for me toward the end of the season. Maybe top 10. Preseason, in the our divisional breakdown, I had Miami over 8 wins. I said at 9 or 10 for them and have them as one of the wild card. So I don't know. It's
too early to tell for sure.
Exactly. And rankings are always random. Tell me what your criteria are and I'll rank them.
They don't have a lot of weaknesses on the team, right? From a roster standpoint, you don't see a lot of weaknesses. We all thought it would be the quarterback, but it seems like that's not the case anymore. They have a good tight end that can catch the ball, right? A lot of teams are missing that, but Miami's one of the teams that has that.
Mm-hmm.
Super speed on the outside. Best speed receivers in the league, no doubt about it. 2 really good running backs in the right scheme. They really haven't done a lot yet this season.
That's true. They're still kind of finding their identity in the right.
Tua's the Miami's been playing from behind, so Tua's been passing a lot. That shows up so far. Rushing offense, they're 31st with 192 total yards. Passing offense, they're 4th in the league with 874 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's because they've been playing from behind. So we really haven't seen them have a real game plan. I mean, obviously the Patriots game, they were up most of the game, but the offense couldn't move the ball. Right.
Yeah,
besides that
great.
You're coming back versus Baltimore. Really the Buffalo game was back and forth, but they were behind. So yeah, the running game I'd say is still on paper above par. Still waiting to see kind of what that looks like. Defense has been good for two or 3 years now, right? Not a lot of changes. They probably got better. With Xavier Howard still on the roster, with Holland in the back in the secondary.
Ingram had a sack against the Bills.
Ingram looked healthy and fresh.
And they're rotating him. He's not there every snap.
Yeah, he's very disruptive if he's
played in the right way.
Healthy and playing in the right system, right.
So their defense is potent. Yeah, I agree. Their defense has been showing up and doing their job for the most part, especially in that first game when they scored a touchdown against New England. To kind of set the tone, really. And the offense only had 1 other touchdown. So, yeah, the defense did what they had to there. Obviously, you look at the Baltimore game and you're down by 30 points. Well, the defense did something wrong there. But against the Bills, they held their own. They did what they had to do when it counted. They gave up a crap ton of yardage, but it didn't translate to points. And in the end, that means the defense is doing something right to confuse that offense and stop Josh Allen a little bit. So, yeah, you got to give credit where credit is due. Those guys who are out there are continuing to do enough to get the victory, and that's ultimately what counts.
For sure. Yeah, let's switch over to the Cincinnati Bengals now at 1-2. And really, they've been in every game. They lost to the Steelers by 3 in late overtime on a couple of missed field goals. I think it was actually blocked. The Dallas game was close. They lost by 3 in that game. And then the Jets, they just beat by double digits and pretty much led the whole game, right? So I think their 0-2 start is probably a random chance, right? I think this team's better than the 0-2 start that we saw.
Right.
Just had a couple problems finishing games out. Looks like Joe Burrow's they're having problems protecting him, or he's holding the ball too long. I really don't know what the issues are.
Protection. Yeah.
But
No,
he's taking too many hits. That's all.
From what I've seen, I mean, he hasn't had any time to throw the ball. So it's 100% about protection and not about him getting the ball out. He can't even hand the ball off or get a pass off sometimes, and he's got 3 guys in his face. So the offensive line for Cincinnati is definitely my biggest worry in this game, continues to be. Right. Not that the Miami defensive front is known for getting tons and tons of pressure, but still, that's when you're facing an offensive line that's pretty weak in this case, or is shown to be for Cincinnati, then they're going to be attacking it even more. They're going to be going after that. They're going to be rushing the passer as much as you can. And when you bring that pressure, if that pressure gets through, that can greatly affect the game. You're talking about hitting the quarterback, sacks, pinning them back, making them 3rd and long. Those are the situations you want to get that offense in. And that puts the pressure on the Cincinnati offensive line as well as their play calling. Okay, if they are getting pressures, how do we get out of this? We got to run the ball more. We got to get quick passes. We got to roll Joe Burrow out. Do whatever you got to do.
Right. Get Joe Mixon involved.
Counter it. Yeah, exactly. They've tried, but that offensive line has been so weak. It just hasn't been able to carry.
Yeah. And we'd have to look at quarterback pressures. I don't have that stat here, but they have the most sacks allowed in the league. They're tied with the Washington Commanders. They've given up the 3rd most yards by sack in the league, behind the Colts and the Commanders. Got a little common theme here, right? Colts, Commanders. You're not going to win games if your quarterback's getting sacked a lot. Right?
Exactly. I mean, and you look at this roster, this is not a bad offensive roster. Obviously, people thought this would be one of the best offensive rosters in the NFL when you've got Joe Mixon at running back, when you've got Joe Burrow as your quarterback, you've got some of the greatest combination of wide receivers in the NFL, with Jamar Chase, obviously, and Boyd, who has really stepped up this season, I think, compared to his last couple where he kind of took a background role. This certainly you would expect Cincinnati's offense to be the reason they're winning games. And instead, what we're seeing is the offense has been, held back by this offensive line and the ability to do what they can effectively. Now that has improved. They did win against the Jets. They did what they had to do. It wasn't a blowout win. It wasn't a, dominant, crazy offensive outburst win, but they did what they had to do to get the win. And again, you're facing Miami. You're going to want to pin them back, get Tua to throw the ball more, and at least get a lead on them, rather than allow them to put points on the board first and pin you back and start to bring the pressure because they have a little more flexibility to target your weaknesses, and even if they give up a big play, right? Because that's what you're worried about. When you pressure more, you are more susceptible to giving up a big play. But if you're up by 14 points, you're bringing the house because one big play doesn't kill you.
And that's what Cincinnati wants to do is run kind of longer routes, right? The air raid down the field throws, right? Mm-hmm. That's what got them to the Super Bowl last year. I don't see any reason why they should change their identity at this point. I just think you got to shore up the offensive line, find ways to protect Joe Burrow, whether that's schematically or that's pass protections or whatever it is. Got to fix that. But I like Cincinnati in this game, honestly. But let's pull up our spread here. It's Miami +4 at Cincinnati. Over under set at 47. Who are you taking in this one?
Well, I'm taking Cincinnati. I think this is the hangover game for Miami, if you will. After beating Buffalo, it's a short week. It's a short week for both teams, but Miami coming off that big victory, celebrating, spending a little too much time maybe focusing on their 3-0 start and the being all on number one on Sports Center or whatever else, and not focusing on the Bengals and their next opponent. And with the injuries that they have going into a short week, much bigger laundry list of injuries than Cincinnati has. I think that is ultimately what plays in their favor, and this game is in Cincinnati. That helps the Bengals as well. So I'll take the Bengals -4 here to get the win, obviously, and then with the against the spread here -4. So yeah, I'm taking the Bengals here.
Yeah, I like the Bengals too. Like we said, they've been in close games, tough games with Pittsburgh and Dallas. I think they finally got some momentum against the Jets. Whereas Miami, I think they played a really tough game. It was everyone on the field is dehydrated, people cramping. There was signs of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Right, I don't think it got quite as far as heat stroke, but precautionary. They're pulling people out of the game. Now, I'm not a scientist or I'm not a human body expert, but it could take a week to get rehydrated, right? I mean, I kind of wonder what their plan is from the medical department. And do we just give them IVs 4 times a day to get rehydrated from a game like that? Or I'm sure they're doing something. It's the NFL. It's the best,
I don't know, but I could use some of that advice because I can tell you what, my voice is still a little hoarse and I'm still feeling the effects of going from 120 degrees in Miami to
You're
60
not hydrated
degrees
yet?
in Syracuse. It's crazy. It really does affect you. So, granted, they have a lot more personal training and high
especially the Miami Dolphins
training.
That's probably
exactly
what the experts
but they
are,
know, and it's still something that will affect them, I think.
Right. So that's why I'm taking Cincinnati, though. I like Cincinnati's offense right now. I mean,
yes,
looks like they did fix some of the offensive line issues last week. If that continues to this Thursday night game, I like Cincinnati in this game, especially with the 4 extra points. Miami, again, they've just had problems playing all 4 quarters from the games that I've watched. I haven't seen 4 quarters from them. Probably Buffalo was the most complete game they played, but really Buffalo lost that game on their own.
Yeah,
Miami didn't take it. You know what I mean? So, I like Miami as a team. I do think they are top 5 in power rankings. I think they will continue to be top 5 moving forward. But this week, I'm taking the Bengals. I just think it's the circumstances favor the Bengals, and I think
they need it more.
The momentum continues, right? It's a week-to-week league, and I think just Cincinnati has the momentum right now in this moment, right? So,
we're not talking enough about the Bengals defense, right? Which has been doing its job, only giving up, 20 points to Dallas, 23 in all the way overtime against the Steelers, and holding the Jets. Obviously, that's not impressive, but still to 12 points. So their defense is still able to put things together too. And coming off these injuries, I think Miami's going to be more susceptible to mistakes, turnovers, and that is always going to favor the team that has the turnover margin. So I think that's another thing working in the Bengals' favor. They need it more. They want it more right now mentally than Miami does. And that's just facts, obviously, with the start of the record 1-2. In order to show you're competing in the AFC, you need wins like this. And it's at home again. So I just think that ultimately it favors Cincinnati, which is why they are the Vegas favorite in this game. You look on just the records and the way things have been going, and you might think, shouldn't Miami be the favorite? And them getting points is a big deal here. But yes, I think it's right where it belongs. Bengals probably win by a touchdown or 6 points, I could see. If it comes down to a field goal, that's my only concern. I'm not betting the house on this game because I could see the Bengals winning by 3, and then you lose the line, the spread, if it's -4 for the Bengals. So, yeah, you got to keep an eye on things like that as well and think about that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Cincinnati plays schematically on defense versus Tyreek Hill and company. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, right? Tyreek Hill was with the Chiefs last year, and whatever they did worked. So we'll see if that carries over with this new team and new scheme. But that'll be fun to watch. And really, that the problem with betting against the Dolphins is we've seen this a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Tyreek Hill can disrupt the game anytime. Cincinnati could be up 7 points, and in 10 seconds, Tyreek Hill scores a touchdown.
That is true. I mean? They have the quick speed on their side to try and come back and win. But I think, again, Cincinnati's defense, giving them credit, can defend against that. Just like we saw at the Bills. They didn't have huge stats against the Bills. The Bills with backup players in their entire, defensive backfield. This is a Bengals team that's playing really well right now, and I think that'll work in their favor to contain that if they do have a lead. It's one thing if they're trying to come back, but if they have a lead, I think they will schematically game plan against Waddle and Hill on the other side. I'm taking the under on this game too, by the way. It's set at 47 right now. I could see this being a 23-17 game. I think that's the final score I'd predict, 23 for the Bengals, 17 for Miami. And that means, you're at 40, not quite that 47. So give me the under here as well, because, Thursday night games, and that holds out for about where both of these teams have been, both offensively and defensively, is right around that 40, 43 points a game mark.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that as well. Take the under. I think it's more of a 20-13 type game. It's just both teams will be exhausted with the short week. Are starting to get into, back-to-back games. We're on week 4 now. Each team has 3 games in their belt. It's, bye weeks are starting to happen soon, so it's time for that type of stuff. So, that's definitely a part of it, especially on a short week here. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Toss your hat in the ring.